Foreign ministers of the G20 developed and emerging economies are gathering in Bali, Indonesia, against a backdrop of the war in Ukraine and an international food and energy crisis. Indonesia's foreign minister urged an end to the war in Ukraine. Tensions have been running high at the meeting, with some of the fiercest critics of Moscow's invasion confronting Russia's top diplomat. As Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Bali for the talks, he was met by angry shouts. Well, Western officials said this G20 meeting of foreign ministers would be anything but business as usual. Let's get more from our chief international affairs editor, Richard Walker. Richard, Foreign Minister Lavrov walked out of closed-door talks after Germany's Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, criticized Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It gives an indication of how far the sides are apart.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of curiosity how this meeting would go, Gerhard. I mean, this is the first meeting of this kind of level, or the level of foreign ministers, where these kind of two sides, the Russians and the West, have really encountered each other since the war began. And as you said, I mean, Western leaders went into these meetings saying there must be no business as usual, so they wouldn't take part in a family photo, they wouldn't take part in sort of receptions or more sort of social sort of side events around the talks. But Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, for instance, making the case that it's right to attend there, that they shouldn't boycott because they didn't want to leave this international stage completely to the Russian side. But what ended up happening was that Lavrov was able to make his speech, and he walked out during Annalena Baerbock's speech. He also ended up dodging Ukraine's Dmitry Kuleba, who was joining virtually over the internet, and he also dodged Tony Blinken's speech. So in effect, Lavrov was able to get his say and was not in a position where he had to listen to those critics. And this became a bit of a microcosm of this huge gulf that we are seeing now between the West and Russia. But not just Russia, also we've seen China also increasingly standing by Russia's side. And in the run-up to this G20 meeting, accusing the United States and NATO of destabilizing the world.
I just want to bring in a quick soundbite from Indonesia's Foreign Minister, Retno Marsudi. Let's just have a quick listen.
So multilateralism is also the only way to coordinate effectively against the global challenges. Therefore, let's try to do our best. And multilateralism will only deliver if there is trust among us.
Richard, the idea of multilateralism is being strongly promoted here. What's its appeal for that part of the world?
Well, yeah, I mean, almost any country would probably sign up to what the Indonesian foreign minister just said there, this belief in multilateralism. But as we see in the context of this G20 meeting, there's been very little that has actually been able to be agreed because these divisions are so great. And multilateralism, I mean, this kind of message you do hear from other countries in Asia. For instance, I was recently reporting in India. India, also like Indonesia, really wants to be able to kind of maintain links with all countries. And there's a real concern in that region, but in other parts of the world too, that the world is kind of drifting or maybe has already entered into a new sort of Cold War where you have these polarized camps. You have the West on one side, you have Russia and China on the other side, and countries that would prefer to be able to keep relations with all of those countries suddenly confronted with a question, OK, whose side are you on? And for countries like Indonesia, countries like India, many other countries in the region, that's a very difficult question to answer because they have important, for instance, defense ties with Russia, they have economic ties with the West, they also have concerns about the rise of China, which makes matters even more complicated. So really quite a heartfelt plea there, I think, from the Indonesians, not to allow this idea of multilateralism to break down and for the world to just tip completely into a bifurcated situation.
Our international affairs editor, Richard Walker. Thank you, Richard.